This is The Blockchain Show. The Blockchain Show is a podcast that demystifies and promotes widespread adoption of cryptocurrencies and distributed ledger technology.
You are listening to episode number 54. Our guest today is Konrad Dabrowski of Lucid, the augmented reality glasses of the future. Coming up first, we're going to have a breakdown of the Milwaukee Blockchain Convention with former co-hosts Steve and his wife Heather. After that will be Konrad of Lucid.
What a great guest we have today for the Blockchain Show. The lovely Heather Sullivan, my wife, coming on the show for the first time. How exciting is that?
Exciting.
Very exciting. So, Heather just organized a event in Milwaukee called the Milwaukee Bitcoin Conference. It was held at
Milwaukee Blockchain Conference.
Right, the Milwaukee Blockchain Conference. And it was at Marquette University. And I attended it, and it was pretty amazing. And so we had to do a special episode of the Blockchain Show to talk about the excitement that's going on in the Third Coast now. Chicago, Milwaukee, Madison apparently is part of the Third Coast now.
I would say the Third Coast is kind of like the region that is around the Great Lakes, but particularly Lake Michigan. So like right now that would probably encompass Chicago, Milwaukee, any major city in Wisconsin, maybe Indiana if they have an interest. We haven't really tapped into Indiana yet, but you know.
There's nothing in Indiana.
Gary.
Gary is terrible.
I shouldn't laugh because, you know, every city has a chance to be the next up-and-coming cool city that's redeeming itself. So Gary's next. I think a lot of the Rust Belt cities are going to be emerging from darkness in the near future.
Darkness and Gary.
A little optimistic, but it's happening in Milwaukee, I think. So
one of the things that I think maybe people might struggle with across the country is how to get there's a lot of momentum in the blockchain space. It's mainly happening in the coasts. So if you're in New York or if you're in California, it's easy. The excitement is palpable wherever you go. It's not hard to find people that are interested in the space. When you get to places like Milwaukee or smaller cities across the country, how do you harness that type of excitement in cities that aren't on the coast?
That's a really good question. I mean, I started kind of putting out feelers to see who in the Milwaukee area was interested in blockchain well over a year ago at this point. As you know the history of our involvement with this. There was the Bitcoin Milwaukee group, and that's a great group of people, and they had pretty, I would say, not deep roots because the whole movement isn't that deep rooted, but the deepest roots of all the groups in Milwaukee, I would say. But as you know, blockchain has kind of broadened and expanded beyond the original Bitcoin movement. So as far as blockchain is concerned, a year ago, things were quite different than they are now. So my putting out feelers was, looking for people on LinkedIn, anybody who expressed an interest in blockchain on their LinkedIn profile that also happened to be in Milwaukee. I reached out to people. I made a little cheesy LinkedIn group. It attracted like 10 people, maybe 12. For like the first 6 months, it was like 12 people and mostly crickets chirping. When I asked those people who had expressed an interest in blockchain if their companies were doing any blockchain R&D, I typically heard an answer of no, that they were personally interested in blockchain or cryptos, but that they weren't really, as far as they knew, their companies weren't really like latching onto it in any way. I did know that about a year ago, Northwestern Mutual, which is a big, I think Fortune 100 company I could be wrong about that, actually, because they're not a publicly traded company. They're a big company in Milwaukee, huge insurance company. Life insurance is their, historically what they're known for. They had done and publicized kind of modestly publicized a blockchain hackathon last year, but it was an internal hackathon and we didn't really know what came of it. So that was all I knew for a while. And at the time I was working for Waterstone Bank, so I kind of like, I'm in a community banking environment. I really couldn't act on much related to blockchain in a community bank. So kind of left it alone for a while. And then I got a position at Marquette University about 7 months ago. So that would have been April of 2017. And when I got to Marquette, I started kind of again, like maybe, now that I'm at a university, I can start exploring this a little more again. A university is a place of ideas, and I work for the College of Business at Marquette. So if, we have departments of finance and management and IT, surely there's somebody among our faculty who are kind of, this is on their radar. And so I had very early on a conversation with David Krause, the professor of finance who runs Marquette's esteemed applied investment management program. It's a program where juniors and seniors have to kind of apply to the program and they get in, and then they manage a fund of they make their own investment decisions. I asked him kind of casually, what do you think about cryptocurrency investing? And that kind of opened a huge can of worms, because he had been really, I think around the same time, had really more and more been, his interest in fintech as a larger area of intrigue had been that had been on his radar and had been kind of pressing on him a little bit as a person in the investing world, seeing the disruption that was happening in the fintech space, in the investment space by fintech, financial technologies. And I think he kind of, thought of blockchain as kind of a part of that larger disruption, which, that's a whole other discussion. But that opened the door, I think, to, there are faculty here who are interested in this, and maybe we can do something about this. And then I started asking more and more faculty, and, occasionally I'd get a little pushback or a little bit of skepticism, but I also found a few people that were genuinely intrigued. Not really finding a lot of people who had deep knowledge of blockchain or who had been doing any research in blockchain, but the interest was there. And from some key faculty members and even some one or two staff members who were like, this is worth pursuing. So over time, and I also during that same period was asking around outside of the university. My job is to facilitate relationships between faculty and any kind of external partner, whether it's a corporate partner, a nonprofit, startup, in the interest of building or beefing up our experiential learning opportunities for our students. So I'm in a role where I'm constantly networking, constantly meeting with partners of all types, and so it kind of made it easy for me to ask around as I'm meeting all these different partners and different collaborators and saying, what are you doing? Is your company doing any R&D in blockchain? And I really didn't find much, except I knew that about Northwestern Mutual, and I was able to thankfully meet with them early on and to identify the people that had been involved with their internal blockchain hackathon. Had a great meeting with them and learned about their background in the space. I also found some people at Fiserv, including the CTO, Mark West, who ended up speaking at our conference about his work in blockchain. So I know those were really like the two big players in Milwaukee that were doing real, blockchain research and development. But one of the issues we face in the Midwest, and one of the reasons that I've constantly run into this over and over again, is the issue of risk aversion as one of the big barriers to Midwestern cities looking like the coasts. So to go back to your question about that, I mean, Midwesterners are known for a lot of things: our casseroles, our church gatherings, our practicality, our niceness, although a lot of people claim to be, whatever nice, like Wisconsin nice. I've heard Seattle nice, but we're a nice bunch of church folks, that like our football, and so that because of those stereotypes, I think, and generally just a natural, and particularly in Wisconsin, people are very cautious, they're very fiscally conservative, I would say, prudent. There's a lot. Supposedly, I keep hearing that there's a lot of capital here. There's a lot of money in Wisconsin, a lot of banks, but there's, like I said, a lot of risk aversion. So there's a lot of capital, but a lot less movement in using and deploying the capital, and a lot less investment in those early stage startups. So those are some of the challenges we face here and why we're different from the coasts. But I think for Chicago and Milwaukee, where we're dealing with that kind of a culture, I'm hoping that what we can do is find the sweet spot between, that risk aversion, which is a negative, I would say, and a barrier to, when you have to take some risk when you're getting into this world of new Wild West sort of territory and exploration. But also it's kind of nice, I think, that having a lot of capital and having a lot of, some prudence and cautiousness can be balanced in a way that's beneficial to us. So maybe if we can find the middle point between those two extremes, then we can, push forward. So that's kind of where we're at. Did you want to say something?
So I just wanted to kind of chime in here, and before we get a little too off track about how we can completely change the entire ethos of the Midwest, let's just talk about the Blockchain Conference.
Okay.
And so we've touched a little bit on Fiserv and Northwestern Mutual. Northwestern Mutual. Who else was a key member of the conference?
So over in all of these inquiries I was making over the last 7 months or so, I went down to Chicago over the summer and met with a few people, including some folks at the Chicago Blockchain Center, Matt Rozak and Jennifer O'Rourke, who are some big, really active people in the blockchain world. I met with them, and Jennifer O'Rourke and I got to talking, and one of the things that I had been kind of charged with when I met with some of our faculty at Marquette, and they kind of, agreed, the consensus was, let's try to organize an event. And one of the things that they wanted was, let's try to represent, we're going to kind of look at this broadly and give kind of a basic overview of what blockchain is and where it's going to make an impact. If we're going to bring in some speakers, let's try to cover an academic and a corporate perspective, and then maybe a government perspective. So
I kind of want to interrupt you there for a second. So I was in the audience, and I noticed that there was a pretty good ratio of men and women. And I've been to a lot of blockchain events, and it's mainly men.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was really, really exciting to see the diversity of the crowd. However, considering you mentioned Jennifer O'Rourke, and she had canceled. Yeah. And so the stage was very... It
was very male.
It was very male. Is that an issue that needs to be addressed? I mean, when you combine, financials, which is very male-dominated world, and then the tech field, those two together, you get this very male-dominated blockchain. What can be done about that, and why is it such an issue?
Well, I mean, just to back up for 1 second, I was trying to, in this event, because we were going for a broad overview, I was trying to find anybody who had ties to Milwaukee, who had some level of expertise or at a minimum a pretty strong understanding of blockchain, and they were hoping to apply it to whatever their business was. I wanted them on stage if possible, and I found more people since I started promoting this conference. People have come out of the woodwork, so there are a lot of people out there, more than I thought. Not a lot, but more than I thought. But anyway, I did reach out to some people in Chicago, including Lamont Black from DePaul, who is kind of our academic among the speakers. And I found, I had six panelists for a panel discussion. They were all men. The three keynote speakers, one of them was Jennifer O'Rourke. And I really, I'm not one to necessarily, I'm not going to just deliberately choose a woman just because, she's a woman. But Jennifer O'Rourke has an impressive resume, and she's really smart, and she's spoken a lot before, and she's great. So I really wanted her to be one of the speakers. But she had to cancel, unfortunately, at the last minute because she was ill, and totally understandable, but also very sad because the stage, as you pointed out, was all men, with the exception of our MC, who I deliberately, chose our professor, the chair of our management department, Monica Adia, who is also great and kind of really gets this stuff. And I really wanted some women on the stage. So But it was really challenging for me because I do appreciate that there were a lot of, I would say, still disproportionately male audience and very disproportionately male, presenters. There were women in the audience, and I'm very happy about that. But I was very challenged by the fact that there were very few women, almost no women on stage. Because I know there are women out there in this space, but I know that generally speaking, the financial world and the world of IT are very male dominant. I'm just wondering what's standing in the way of women being in this, growing in this space. So that's something I'm going to kind of be thinking about as I move forward. I did recently learn that there's a group at MIT called Women in Blockchain that I'm exploring. I reached out to them, although I haven't really had a chance to dig into that. But I'm really troubled by this. I feel like I don't know if it's just a culture of that kind of makes women feel a little excluded, just unintentionally or intentionally. I'm pretty sure it's unintentional, but I think as a woman myself, I do feel like there's a certain, and I come from a communications background, so the things I've had to learn to even converse semi-intelligently in this space I've had to spend a lot of time asking you, my husband, Steve, a lot of questions over the last 3 years. I was initially kind of skeptical about Bitcoin when I first heard about it, but then I bought some Bitcoin and I got hooked on just the investing side of it as a kind of casual, let's buy cryptocurrencies. Let's learn about what this thing's all about. Kind of went along for the ride at first, and then I just got more and more into it. And, I would say in the last year I've gotten much more into it, but it has taken me a really long time to get this stuff. And I would say I'm not, anywhere near, becoming a cryptologist, but...
I saw something pretty funny on Reddit, I guess. I think the quote was something like, "Oh yeah, my girlfriend could care less about cryptocurrency, and then I gave her $10 in Bitcoin, and then she bought something with it, and now she has $120 left because of the price increase." So it's always a good way to get women interested in this. Give them a little bit of it and watch it go up in value. It's certainly part of the excitement is just the.
I think I think about this a lot because I worked in banking for 4 years in the marketing department. I was never really taken seriously there as a banker. I don't think most people think of bank marketeers as bankers, although when you're working in a marketing department and I was the kind of brand manager for the bank and managed their charitable foundation, you have to understand banking. And I definitely spent a lot of time trying to teach myself banking because it was my first foray into the financial world. And then I started getting into investing, and then I got into crypto investing, and I've tried to learn as much as possible. Thank you, Investopedia, for all that you have done for me. But I have no formal financial training, and I also gave up on math early on as a young person. Even though I do kind of gravitate toward math and like math, and have a lot of accountants in my family, and math teachers and various people who are more math oriented. But I don't know if, one of the things I think about a lot is that, if there's a dominant stereotype in a culture of women are bad at math and men are good at math, or women are better at nurturing and men aren't good at nurturing, how much does that really penetrate? Even if you know rationally that it's probably not true, how much does that guide your actions? And, I am really troubled by that because I do think that, I have a certain degree of insecurity about anything math, finance, computer science oriented. There's a small voice in the back of my mind that says, women aren't as good at this. And I have to fight that every single day. So I'm trying to teach myself. Thankfully, I'm very lucky because I work for a university that I'm actually enrolled in the MBA program at Marquette so that I can learn more about math and IT and take these classes and have some formal training, but it is an uphill battle. And so I think that's my where I'm coming from, but I can't imagine. I'm sure there are other women out there who have a similar story. And even the women who had, never gave up on that, getting a good math education, computer science education, or finance, they're still facing roadblocks constantly. And, it's just the nature of being a woman in the world today. I mean, look at all the stuff that's coming out with the Me Too, Harvey Weinstein thing. It's just, it's kind of frightening and, amazing that this is happening on such a grand scale, all this exposure of all these ugly things that have happened behind closed doors for generations and for centuries and probably all since the dawn of time. Women are finally feeling brave enough to come forward and say enough is enough. That's a little more of a, I don't know if people will see the connection, but I see the connection that, as I'm looking at this stage full of men, nothing against the men. They've all accomplished great things. They're great people, intelligent people. Why aren't there women on that stage? This is, we're living in a world where women are constantly having to face, these ugly things that, make them feel small and make them feel like they're not good enough and that they shouldn't be, executives and leaders of Fortune 500 companies or founders of startups or excelling or, stars in the world of, IT. So that's kind of something I'm hoping to fight against over the next, year. My new project.
And it wasn't all such like a downer. There was some excitement in the room as well too.
Yeah.
And there was, the young kids traveling from Madison and all over the place. Just they really get this stuff over in Madison. Was it Badger Blockchain? Can you tell me a little bit about that group?
Yeah. Well, and sorry, I hope I didn't sound too, negative, but I just, it's one thing I'm challenged by. I will say that it was really overall an awesome event and, so great to see the energy in the room from people of all ages. I want to talk about that too. I'm really impressed with young people and their energy and the knowledge they bring. I am also really honestly very impressed with how many retirees and older people and people that are kind of in transition in their careers, but they're maybe, phasing out of the beginning, the first career they had, and they're in their 50s or older. A lot of gray-haired people in that room, and they were very excited. And I have found that in the blockchain space, and I think this is true in just the startup community also, there is a very strong element of older people who are looking to reinvent themselves, and they have the internet now, so they're knowledgeable and they can educate themselves and they can make a transition more gracefully, I think, than people, older people a generation or two ago could, where they were just phased out and that was it. Now I think older people can reinvent themselves more easily, and I'm just so happy about that because I feel like the nice thing I saw in that space yesterday was that it's a space for people of all ages, and hopefully I think people of all cultures, and hopefully, like I said, women as well. When women are a little underrepresented. How
much of it is that they're able to reinvent themselves versus we're kind of forced to in today's world? Like you can't, in the tech world, you can't stop learning. You have to, you're entering a field where you constantly have to learn what's new. I mean, if you apply for a job and they're looking for Python 3.2 and you have Python 3.19, I mean, they'll look at you like, oh my God, that's an exaggeration. But, I think that, this day and age, older people are forced to really learn the new technologies. But there's something still exciting to see, the fever and the desire to learn these new technologies. I think that it really speaks to the technology. I talk about, how just global distributed ledgers are basically the only technology that can solve humanity's greatest challenges, like global warming, slave labor in the supply chain. They can't really be solved without this technology. There's too much of an incentive for one rogue nation to cheat without having this ability. And so that's really, for me, where the excitement comes from. I think there's possibly also, what do you think excites you the most about this technology? Well,
I want to answer that. I would agree with you that, a lot excites me. I am a very Midwestern, prudent, financially prudent person. And I like the efficiencies that are, that may present themselves with the implementation of blockchains. I think that is really exciting because I am an accountant's daughter and I like saving money and I think that's really kind of cool. But I also really do kind of get excited about the decentralization and the democratization. I know there's some exploration. There has been some exploration of, the social good that can come out of the application of blockchain technology. And I think that, is very promising and exciting. Banking the unbanked, or not really banking them, but giving them a leg up financially. I think that's really exciting. One of the things that I'm, really invested in is and concerned about is poverty and domestic poverty, and marginalized people who are just can't, over generations, can't lift themselves out of poverty for a variety of reasons. And I feel like, because I live in Milwaukee, which is one of the most segregated cities in the country, a city with a lot of poverty, a lot of problems. The book Evicted, which came out a year and a half ago or so, by Matt Desmond, really impacted me and many people. But all about the problem of the problems associated with eviction and how it just traps people in a life of poverty. If there is a blockchain application that could solve that problem, I would be all over it. I think it's really, I even proposed one at a while back at EtherCamp. I think someone said it wasn't really a realistic idea, but it was one of the most the most original idea that was on there or something like that. I had some, I don't even remember now what it was. It was like a token associated with, evictions or, property owners and so forth. But anyway, I think that is a very exciting area. I also want to go back really quick to the young people at the conference, because you mentioned Badger Blockchain. And I think I started saying that one of the people that's pretty active in Badger Blockchain, Roz Stengel, was on the show. You met her at the Distributed Trade Hackathon in St. Louis over the summer. And we had her on the show, and she was great. And, that's really exciting to me that she's a young woman that's getting into the space, and she's very knowledgeable and excited and energized. And the Badger Blockchain group has some really good people that are doing, have some really they're just amazing. But I was also excited to see that there were students from several colleges who came to this event. I don't know if you saw this, but at the end of the conference, when I was kind of running around trying to get everything cleaned up, we had this poster that we had made to kind of welcome to the Milwaukee Blockchain Conference, and there was this young man. I was taking the poster down, and he was like, "Oh, hang on, can you put that back so I can take a picture of myself in front of it?" I'm the, I think he was the organizer or some person very heavily involved with the blockchain student group at, I think, UW Milwaukee. So it was really, I love that. And I saw other people who were taking pictures. They wanted to get a picture in front of the PowerPoint welcome message, and it was just really cool to see how young people, the students at our universities in Wisconsin, have embraced this, and they're organizing. And we're going to give the coast a run for their money, I think, but we still have a lot of challenges. So
I think that this was the largest blockchain organization in Wisconsin.
Event?
Yeah, event.
Yeah, it was the only. So it was. I was kind of billing it for promotional purposes as the state's first blockchain conference. There have been blockchain, really more like Bitcoin meetups and some things around cryptos over the years. And I think there have been blockchain, a blockchain workshop or seminar within some other conference. You gave that Ethereum, was it a smart contract or Ethereum World Computer?
Yeah, I think I had 5 people attend.
Yeah, last year. But that was last year. And you're giving, by the time this goes live, it will be over. But he's about to give an ERC 20 little class at Milwaukee Code Camp, which is a part of Startup Milwaukee Week. And I'll be really curious to see if 1 year later you get a better turnout. But there had been some shorter, events within events and so forth related to blockchain. But this was the first fully, this was a conference that was totally dedicated, if I could talk, to blockchain.
And how many people attended?
I would say between 250 and 300 people. So that's pretty good. I mean, I think that rivals, conferences in, Chicago maybe. I think they probably get a few more than us, but that's pretty good for Milwaukee. I would say I was very pleased, and the energy in the room was just fantastic. People were networking. There was so much networking going on, so many great connections. I think that's what made me the happiest, was just how people just seemed to really be making some good connections at this event. And I hope it leads to some good, maybe some startups, maybe some good things. So good creative, innovative activity.
So what's next for the Milwaukee blockchain community? Are you going to do these ones every year, or bigger and better next year? Like an entire week-long thing?
That's a really good question. I had, when this journey started at Marquette 7 months ago, or maybe like 4 months ago, about halfway through, I had kind of written up a plan for a lab. I know I talked somewhere along the line, I talked to Heidi Pease, who is, I think, the founder of the UCLA blockchain lab, and I had got some great information from her. She was awesome and really helpful, and kind of got inspired to maybe do like a mini version of that at Marquette. But there's some, I think there's some minor barriers, like, who runs this lab? That's always a concern. Who pays for it? And where is that faculty expertise going to come from when, nobody on our faculty really has that expertise yet? So those are some barriers, but I think we can maybe overcome them and with some creative solutions. But, I think that going forward, I'm gonna follow up with a survey to the people who attended the blockchain conference to kind of get a feel for what people want. I'm thinking maybe we organize some working groups, we organize more events, workshops. I mean, there's possibilities for collaboration, maybe creating that kind of lab environment where people can come together, public, private, people who want to create startups together with, faculty or corporate partnerships, research. So training too. I think that's one thing that we were interested in exploring was, and I don't know if our own faculty can teach these classes. They will I know our faculty going forward are going to look more and more at incorporating some blockchain related content into their classes. But getting our students and maybe the community as well, some really like good hardcore, smart contract coding training is going to be something that we look at as well, where maybe we have to bring in an expert from the outside to come and give a workshop on coding. But that's something we want to do. So there are a lot of ideas on paper. We just have to kind of figure out what people want and what there's support for and what we can reasonably offer, and then just kind of start building.
Who is your favorite panelist?
I don't think I can answer that question, but I love all the panelists. I am so appreciative of what they have brought to Milwaukee and their bravery for, doing what they're doing in a risk-averse environment like ours. But I thought that everybody was great. I really enjoyed the 2 keynote presentations, and obviously that's a different context than a panel discussion, but so it's kind of an unfair comparison. But the 2 keynotes were really engaging. It's always so great to see a CTO of a huge company in the financial services industry like Fiserv take a leadership role in this emerging technology like that, especially in the Midwest, was really impressive, and he's a good speaker. And Lamont Black was just so delightful. His presentation was, I thought it struck a really nice balance between, one of the things I feel a little insecure about is giving, the right kind of respect to the Bitcoiners, and the libertarians among us who really their interest is in the decentralization component of Bitcoin and that promise. I feel a little vulnerable because, I represent the College of Business. I'm a person that manages corporate relationships. I came from a corporate environment, from a publicly traded company. I'm not anti-corporation. I'm anti-irresponsible corporations, and I'm anti-corporate greed. But I really like the idea of a socially responsible corporation. So I want to strike a balance there between like showing respect to the origins of Bitcoin and also respecting that, partnerships, across those lines of like the libertarian and the decentralized lines with the corporate partners is something that I kind of like. So I was nervous about that with this conference because we're bringing together people who may come from very, very different places. When you have a CTO of a financial services company speaking, and then you have like the original Bitcoin Milwaukee founders in the same room, how's that going to go? Well, it seemed like it went pretty well. I didn't sense any kind of animosity. Everybody seemed to be in good spirits and very friendly with one another. And I really feel like Lamont Black, I personally felt like his presentation, kind of going over, well, I'll ask you that in a second, but I thought his presentation really nicely brought those worlds together in a very graceful way. So everybody seemed to really, his presentation seemed to resonate with a lot of people. And it was very fun to watch. But overall, I thought that all the speakers were fantastic, and I was very happy that they all agreed to participate. And I really feel sad that Jennifer couldn't join us.
It really is like strange bedfellows, the tech people and the libertarians, and now it's like finance.
And corporate, executives.
Right.
Yeah.
It's always, you have like Mark West, who gave a good presentation, but you have to give like a simplified version of blockchain that a CEO can understand. And a CEO, uses a BlackBerry. So it's a different, and needs somebody to like click a PowerPoint for them because they don't know how to do that. And
I will say that's true. There are lots of CEOs out there, but we probably shouldn't make sweeping statements like that because there are probably a few CEOs that don't use BlackBerries or need a secretary to run a clicker. But I have been a clicker for a CEO, so I know that is a very real stereotype.
And they're not paid to be tech people. They're CEOs, not. And so you end up having to give something that is kind of woefully inaccurate, just because it's a different audience that doesn't have the tech background. And so you have a simplified, which you could incorrect would be, a different way of phrasing it, version of what a blockchain is given to a CEO, and then you have somebody who wants, the real technical detail, including like hashes and Merkle trees and those type of. So it's just there's a lot of different people, and Bitcoiners were kind of political first. It was. And the Fed type of stuff.
It started. The whole Satoshi white paper kind of was introduced in the wake of the global financial crisis, right? It was kind of a response to. That's how it's sometimes framed. Maybe that wasn't the intention of Satoshi, but it's framed as like a response to the corruption of the financial industry, right?
Yeah, there was so when you mint a block, so you're allowed to put. Certain text in the block. So as a miner, you can write something down. And the first block, called the nascent block, actually had the paper headline. So it kind of served two purposes. One, now that paper headline was in the block, you have this date verification. So it's a verification service. Here's the newspaper headline. It was Chancellor on the brink of second bailout for the bank. So it kind of had this, meta purpose of like, not only, here's the reason why Bitcoin needs to exist, because governments and banks are kind of bad with managing money. And that doesn't mean that like the previous ways of managing money were 100%, might make right was better. Certainly having financial instruments is better than not having financial instruments, but having Bitcoin is better than having government-backed currencies. So yeah, it was definitely in that wake. So you have those type of people, but they were political first, And now, like Ethereum, they're kind of tech first and become political later. And it's certainly interesting to watch, like those people who when you look at the world. You think that maybe governments are really the ones that are in control of the world or making the laws. But I think it's mainly like multinational corporations that are really in charge of things. And when you have a decentralizing technology like blockchain, it'd be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's very exciting stuff, and I hope that the promise of it ends up coming to fruition. I mean, there's this whole journey there's so many potential forks in the road, pun not intended. I just, I'm still optimistic that maybe this could change the world, but we have a long way to go. And there's always human greed and human failing in the way. So let's hope that doesn't mess up all that could be accomplished with blockchain technology.
I mean, if it doesn't save the world, at least, you mentioned some things that kind of like the low-hanging fruit is giving financial services to the unbanked. And that's kind of a big deal. I mean, there are maybe 2/3 of the entire world's population is unbanked and doesn't have identification services. Mm-hmm. And blockchain is perfect for that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, still pretty big.
It's pretty major. I mean, it like you said, it's not going to change the whole world, but it could make a significant impact. So that's pretty exciting.
Why is Marquette positioned to be a leader in blockchain technology?
Boy, that's a really good question. Well, we have a very strong and deeply rooted business school, and we also have a very strong and deeply rooted College of Engineering, and I would say I don't know as much about the computer science program, but we have, they're all in separate colleges. The computer science program is housed under our College of Arts and Sciences. So with those three, established colleges and, all the faculty associated with them, I think we have, the potential to have some really good collaborations. Our university is also, it's a Jesuit university, but it's also run for the first time in the history of Marquette, the president is not a Jesuit. He came from another university, and he's got a real spirit of innovation, and has really that kind of the tone from the top is one of supporting innovation and research and being disruptive. So I think that is really important. And also, not to get into religion or anything, but and I don't know how much of the audience knows about the Jesuit tradition, but I think Marquette has a reputation, a very strong and very legitimate reputation for being very ethically focused. So this university is, really puts, this isn't just talk, it's real action when it comes to just a culture of supporting ethical behavior. So, we could, have some really good discussions about social innovation with blockchain and ethics with blockchain and those sorts of questions. So I think there's a lot of potential for a university like ours to really do some good work in this space, and I'm really excited about that. And also the other nice thing about being an urban institution like Marquette, because we're situated kind of in the heart of Milwaukee, is that we also have, the Milwaukee School of Engineering up the road, and across town we have the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, and there are other universities in the area too, several of them. But I think just that triad of this private engineering university or college school, I don't know if they're considered a university, but a private college focused on engineering, and a very strong Research One state school with lots of programs. And they're also introducing a connected systems or IoT lab, and they're doing some really great work over there at UW-Milwaukee. And then us at Marquette, I think that triad is really even makes us even stronger, and those collaborations across the city to be even stronger. And plus, the other thing that's kind of an advantage of a smaller city like Milwaukee is that, I nothing against Chicago. I think Chicago's awesome, but when I go there, I feel a little lost. I mean, it is a big city. There's a ton of stuff going on, which is really great in some ways. But in other ways, I feel like Milwaukee, with its kind of small, we're much smaller. It's also a lot easier to build a community. in Milwaukee because, people are accessible and there's just not as many of us. So it's easy to forge those relationships, build things really quickly if we want to. So those are some things that I think make Marquette positioned to, really maybe be a leader in this space.
Certainly exciting stuff. I was glad to be able to attend the Blockchain Conference in Milwaukee. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
Next year you will be a speaker. I do want to say, you asked about if there would be like a bigger and better conference next year. I don't really know the answer to that. I think one of the things I'm also kind of challenged by is like, do we build a lab based solely on blockchain when there's already talk of like alternative blockchains? I mean, things just move so fast in this world. The technology is rapidly evolving. Is blockchain even going to be a thing in a year, or will blockchain kind of morph into other things? I mean, I'm not saying decentralization or cryptocurrencies or blockchain technology will be gone. It's just that it may morph or be rebranded in some way. And in a year or two, when I wrote the plan that I wrote for a Marquette blockchain lab, one of the things that I kind of noted in there was this lab will have a shelf life of 2 to 5 years. Not because I don't believe in the future of blockchain. I just think if you were to have like an internet lab or a center for internet studies or something like that in 1990 or whatever, like earlier in the evolution of the internet.
It was like in the 70s is when they came out with that.
I know the ARPANET came around in the 70s, but when it became like more accessible to everyday people, would that be like the early 90s, late 80s? But,
90s, mid-90s.
I think that like that might have made sense back then if that was a thing schools did, which I think that's more of a thing now. But, would it make sense to have like a center for the internet now? No. So I think eventually we'll get to a point where we don't need to have all this championing of this technology. It will just be integrated and, proven, hopefully, and be in use. And we'll move on to promoting and advocating for newer technologies that are, disrupting things. So I think that's why I'm not sure I can commit to we're going to have this be an annual blockchain conference, because we may not have a need for that. There may not be a demand. I think we're really trying to go with where's the demand? What do people want? What's the most useful and helpful thing we can do? And so I'd like to say there will be more events for sure. There will definitely be workshops and more regular, I hope. But who knows what's going to happen a year from now? It's just impossible to tell.
Yeah, I think that if you look at, blockchain technology, in and of itself is an amazing new technology. But it's really when you combine it with the other, I'm going to term like fog technologies that are out there that, you're familiar with the cloud.
Right.
Kind of takes its analog from that, where it's, data isn't stored in the cloud. It's kind of stored at the user level. So you have blockchain technology and AI and Internet of Things and, these things that are more user-centric, decentralized applications. And I think, it's blockchain exists in this larger space of other fog technologies, and that's certainly something that's not to be I don't know, help me out with the word.
Discounted, maybe. Complete each other's sentences.
So, yeah, well, thanks for taking the time to organize this event, and
it was an honor. I'm very honored and humbled to be a part of it, and excited to be on the show finally after being behind the scenes for so long.
Yeah, this is your first time in front of the mic.
Yeah, that's right. But I was working a little bit behind the scenes over the last year and a half. Well, how long has it been now? 2 years almost? No, it will be 2 years in May, I think, that this show has existed. Because we launched in May of 2016, I think. It was in May. Yeah. And so it's been almost, well, not quite, but close. We're closing in on 2 years, which is amazing. And, yeah, I've always been I've been asked to be on the show before, and I'm always sorry, I'm not really a radio personality, but it was fun to be on. Thank you.
Okay, that was fantastic and very interesting. If you want to find out more, Links will be available at the end of this for anybody who wants to find out more information. And onto the interview of the week.
Okay, yes. It's time to put down those two-dimensional screens. And let's listen to Konrad talk about Lucid.
Hi, my name is Konrad Dabrowski. I'm a CPA and finance director of Lucid. Maybe a little bit about myself before I, start talking about Lucid and what we are. I used to be, I guess I don't like the term finance guy, but, I did finance and accounting as I did master's in finance and accounting in Warsaw School of Economics back in Poland. I was working for a good 6-7 years as, professional financial auditor for Deloitte, which is one of the top public accounting firms. I used to have experience in corporate accounting with RBI, which is a parent company of Burger King worldwide. They have headquarters here in Miami. That's how I ended up being in Miami. And then I became the group financial controller of Tech Capital. Tech Capital is intellectual property company based in the UK, but operating out in the US as well. And so that happens that Lucid is, one of the portfolio companies of Tech Capital. Tech Capital is actually a public company listed in London Stock Exchange. And so, that's where Lucid kicks in. The way, Lucid was started as a project is Tech Capital, as a parent company of Lucid, has premier access to intellectual property developed at, top R&D institutions, academic universities in the world. We have a software platform that helps us find new, innovative, groundbreaking technologies developed at those universities. And then what Tech Capital as a parent company does, they try to commercialize them and, essentially market them and find commercial applications, right? Because there is so much intellectual property developed at those institutions that, can be used in across commercial, retail, and industrial applications. So Lucid in itself focused on technology related to augmented reality, and 12 or 13 technologies were put together or exclusively licensed by Tech Capital and then passed on to Lucid. And those technologies, what they do is, we looked at, back in the past, we looked at, okay, what are the main problems with augmented reality displays, or what are the main problems with, why the previous attempts with smart glasses were, unsuccessful, right? We all heard, the stories about Google Glass or, there were big, clunky, heavy-looking, people were picking up on people who were wearing them, and they're just not user-friendly, right? There was something missing that, a lot of things were missing that prevented them from going mainstream. And so we onboarded a couple of augmented reality and optics advisors, and they helped us, put together this amazing portfolio of technologies that address those problems. And so we have a portfolio of exclusively licensed 13 augmented reality patents that collectively help or teach, how to essentially make smart glasses lightweight, compact, and prescription ready. So like even the glasses that, I'm wearing now, they will be potentially, they will be fit for that technology because the optics behind it, enables it, right? So when you really think about what's the main issue with the augmented reality displays is, they're just too big, too heavy, and geeky looking, right? Like, some geeky applications are fine for narrow audiences, gamers, but the goal is, and where the value is really, the mainstream applications, right? And so where the technology comes from is University of Central Florida, and, talking about Orlando, where one of you guys is, and the College of Optics and Photonics. And, this particular institution, just to give you a little bit more of a background, is the one of the top optics and AR, academic institutions in the United States, right? And the lead inventor behind all of those patents, 12 out of 13, is on our team as a scientific advisor. Her name is Professor Rowland, and she's the brain. She's like, we don't want to overstate it, but we call her the Einstein of augmented reality because she put over a decade with her team into, developing this technologies, and well-funded and hurried research over the years. So, and thanks to Tech Capital being a public company that had a relationship with UCF, we were able to essentially, secure those licenses over some time. So we got, pretty lucky there. And then with that, we compiled a team of other scientific and of optics and AR scientists, a lot of them very accomplished with decades of experience, coming from different schools between Georgia Tech, Vanderbilt School of Engineering, University of Rochester, which is another major academic hub. So yeah, that's a little bit. I know I was supposed to just talk about myself, but then I'm not as exciting as the technology and the project altogether. But just going back to myself, I'm the finance lead, so I'm responsible for financial reporting, making sure that our accounting procedures, internal controls are in place. Our governance is really of highest quality. I think that's also something that separates us from other ICOs, is our standards of governance, which we can talk about as well.
Fantastic. That's really, really exciting. So where do you see this technology going in the future?
Yeah, what's your vision? No pun intended.
The vision is, I think, you have to kind of analyze it and where we are with our technology, when we are with, with our company and the project, and then where the market is specifically itself too. And so, in terms of market, it's still in early stages, but we've done a significant research into, future applications and future size of the markets, and conservative estimates are over $100 billion just for augmented reality displays by early 2020s, and it's going to get close to that number by in 2 years. It's almost 2018. Can't believe that. But yeah, so and then where we fit with that, and when you talk about the market, right, there's just such a variety of applications, between commercial, industrial, and healthcare, and then personal applications, or we were even having discussions with, a person who's a vice president of British Deaf Association, how much it would help them, the technology as well. Things like, distracted driving. You don't have to look into your screens because you can, project a display in front of you. You don't have to look away. It's a big problem, at least in Florida. I'm pretty sure it's a big problem everywhere else. So, variety of different applications. And then where we are with our project is we're developing. The purpose of the crowd sale is, there are a couple of, purposes. One, we're raising $10 million to build, the first production prototype, which we anticipate to build by early 2019. We're not going to tell people that, hey, we're going to have this, ready in 2 or 3 months, right? We want to be totally transparent and realistic. So I know that some people say, oh, 2019 is so far away, but I'm really telling them that, considering all of those innovative, features that we have, it's not really that long. And so once we have that, we're going to be, and the first very beta prototype we expect in the summer, in the summer of next year, and according to our projected timeline. And so the vision is to essentially build a working prototype that we can then, apply or manufacture and have essentially, concrete business plan to address different applications across across industrial applications and retail, right? We don't want to, I think it's early enough, and, we don't want to limit ourselves in particularly to one aspect, right? Meaning, say we're going to only do, display that is going to help, people in healthcare or other industrial applications, right? We want to keep our gates open, our options open. So the market potential is amazing, and I think, we're focusing on, producing the first prototype to show that, that's what our technology can do, and then, think about applications. Because, across the board, I think there's going to be variety of them, and the value is going to be amazing in addressing those shortcomings, right? Because, what we focus on and what our technology and, and our scientists are very optimistic about is, addressing those most important things that are troubling augmented reality displays right now. And yes, we're focusing on the optics element of it. But when you look at, like, say, top 10, issues troubling AR displays right now, we're addressing 6 or 7, So even if we address 1 or 2, that would be huge. But addressing more than half, I think, is going to create amazing value for for Lucid and for token holders in the future. And obviously going forward into 2018, completing the crowd sale as we anticipate at the end of this month. We're going to immediately engage the industrial design company. We're already speaking to a few of them, and we're going to pick probably the one by, say, mid or end of December. And then electro-optical engineer as well. We'll already have optics and AR, scientists and experts working on the central optical system underlying, the prototype as well. And so 2018 obviously is going to be first part of the year hardware, but then once we get the beta prototype going in the summer, we'll start, obviously thinking about software and content. And that's where, the blockchain application will kick in, because, the reason why one of the reasons why we're doing the token sale, not any other, way of, say, financing that, is that we think that when you think about, like, the vast, app and content ecosystem that will need to be created, our vision, when you talk about vision, and, it's fine. Some people, can disagree with that. That's our vision. We think that blockchain will be a really good tool or a platform to kind of incentivize both developers and users in a way that, we'll create blocks every time new app is created by the developer, and, they're going to be rewarded with blocks. Same for, users who will be able to, review or point out, the weaknesses of apps or software. Their feedback, the best feedback, obviously, not any feedback, will be rewarded as well. And then we'll also have it, the vision is to have it as a peer-to-peer payment method, right? The LCD token, our own currency, which would be, I think, probably the fastest and most efficient, so you can, buy content as well on the platform. But, there's just so many apps and, the universe, the entire ecosystem, that, kind of like democratizing the process with blockchain. I think it's a really nice application, and, that's our vision. Some people might not agree with that, but hey, we're Lucid. That's our vision. We have amazing hardware tech, and we want to leverage, blockchain for the content creation and, incentivizing people, if that will essentially produce the best quality, apps, right?
That's quite interesting, and I think that's a very good use of blockchain. You mentioned internal process and procedure. Is that somewhere where you can use blockchain to manage your internal organization too?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, we're very open to. I've been reading. We've been reading about applications of blockchain in terms of financial accounting, and procedures, and I think that's a really good application too, because it's just it's really all about, when you think about, we're pretty new to this space, right? We're not pretending we're blockchain experts. We've been there for a few months only. But, it's like how we can like further like legitimize or add to the value of the ecosystem is like, increasing transparency, increasing, the ways of communication we can, and that people see what we're doing, that we're held, accountable to what we spent over, in the process, right? That we're following our white paper in terms of fund use, right? The breakdown that we've set up. So, I think that's something we're going to implement. That's something that I think is, will be won't be that hard to implement. So, that's something that will definitely, I think, at least in the first couple of months, we'll have it going.
For anyone who's listening who doesn't know the difference between VR and AR, would you mind briefly explaining how this could work for them?
Yeah. So, from the augmented reality, we're talking about, like superimposing the digital, the digital image. And so, that's why I think we're kind of more steering towards, augmented reality, because we think eventually it has, it's what it does. It superimposes the display image into, it's like occlusion between, virtual and real aspects, right? And real objects right in front of you. So the key actually that's actually one of the patents technologies that we have helps, because that's one of the issues troubling the current augmented reality displays is it kind of is messy in terms of, the virtual objects get commingled with the real objects. So our technology improves the accuracy of the real object detection, right? There's obviously still, the software part where it will be needed to like kind of look up the object, right? But in terms of like the actual hardware device being able to recognize the real object, whatever it's wine in your shopping cart, you look it up, and then your glasses will be able to read about it, and then through the app research information about it, right? And then display in front of you.
That's so cool.
And so that's one of like that's one of the actual main problems. And I'm not like optics expert enough to explain exactly in technical terms, but it really comes down to increasing the real object detection accuracy that our technology has. And we have ready materials for with the scientific analysis of particular optics, light guides, and so forth for folks to analyze, because the problem is like for a company like us that comes with a solution like that, especially in the ICO world where so many ICOs focus on software and blockchain itself, that we kind of stepped out of that pretty significantly, right? So the problem is to like kind of put it in a way that it's a good mix between, it's like a central point between being overly technical and not talking too generally about it, right? So there we have already materials prepared by our optics lead, and then also by independent optics and AR experts that talk about how our technology addresses that. But yeah, and I would say the VR applications are more like narrow, focus on gaming. Augmented reality displays are actually superimposing the image, and there's kind of the virtual display is commingled with the real objects that come in front of you. So and I think that's why augmented reality didn't really go forward as much, is because the current optics technologies that are being pursued in, whether it was Google Glass 1.0 or I think even previous HoloLens, they had like a very narrow field of view display that was kind of like, too weird, or just like it was like 45, 50 degrees. Now our optics technology is up to 120 degrees, so it's much wider and much more natural, right? And so kind of just spatial recognition is much wider as well.
You mentioned that you're still in your ICO phase. Where can people go to kind of learn more and potentially contribute to that?
Yeah, so we just a few basic facts about our ICO is, we're not seeking to raise a huge amount in here. We're only raising 10 million, which I think comparably to some other ICOs that had some crazy numbers out there. Because we know what we need, right? We need to develop a prototype. We got quotes from those industrial design firms, from electro-optical engineering firms, that tell us that you need 6 to 8 million and to develop a prototype, and then you have like all the business development and marketing costs, right, which we'll need, right, to make it commercially successful over next year and a half. So we're launching 100 million LCD tokens, 50 million, so half of that goes to public, in the ICO. And then one LCD token is worth 25 cents. We have some bonus structure up to 35% free LCD tokens. And the sale goes until November 30th. We've already raised some funds through the pre-sale, but we really started our presence in October. So I would say 90% of people who heard about us after October 15th at least. And so go to lucid.co. We have a new landing page that talks about our technology, that has a scientific review, so you can read about, every single patent and how it impacts, the design, how it actually will make the glasses, lightweight, compact, and prescription ready. And then we have some, documentation of some applications. We talk about our team. We have 7 Ph.D.s. And like I said, some of the top optics, not only in the US, to be honest, and I'm not saying that for the purpose of ICO, but, we'll have it obviously going, and after the ICO as well, Professor Janik Roland, she's actually, when you do the research, she's actually considered one of the most renowned optics and AR scientists in the US. So you can learn more about the team. We have our LinkedIn, links over there, so we can check each one of our team members. We actually keep adding new scientists because it's funny because like in September, October, we've been building the team, reaching out to people other than Janik Roland who have been with us, from the get-go. But now, they're reaching out to us saying, oh, I see you have, this and this. I think they're really good. I see what you guys have on hand. And if there is a way we could participate in the project. So the number of scientists on the team is growing as well, which is good. You can read also about our governance, which is, one of the things that we feel like we stand out as well because the management tokens will be locked up for at least 12 months. So pretty much until after we have, the first prototype. So we won't touch them by then. Other than regular newsletter, email, social media updates on the prototype and photos and so forth, we'll also have semi-annual management reports reviewed by third-party auditors. That's something that I actually wanted to have to kind of have someone, look at it and our progress independently, and not just management say, what they want to say. I mean, we have integrity, we're honest people, but, we do want to prove that, hey, there are third-party, firms looking at us. And so that will be reviewed before we actually release anything to token holders or the market for that matter. And so we realize the importance of, the project development, the communication, to the market and to the token holders post the ICO. And, we've also did a whole legal compliance section just to make sure that, we're not, our token is not considered security as well. We probably have one of the most robust legal, compliance sections in the white paper. It's boring, but, it's useful. We even had like Bird & Bird, which is one of the top legal counsel firms, I think, out there, like have us prepare like an opinion actually on whether or not our token can be considered security, which they considered it's not. So, few things going on in here. One other thing that I do want to mention is, apart from the team of scientists that we have on board, being obviously focused on the merits, which is, eventually the technology, right? But we're also very focused on the commercialization and, the business development aspect of it, obviously. And so, our strategic commercialization lead is Dr. Clifford Groves. He himself is actually a named inventor of 19 patents. And he actually founded and took 3 companies public before over 20 years between New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ, actually, and London Stock Exchange. So, and then we have Dr. Michael Kayat, who's our optics lead, who's also has 20 years of experience in commercializing optics technologies. And then we have myself, we have Harrison Groves, who's our media lead and lead UX designer as well. We have a couple other team members who are blockchain specialists and app designers as well. So, like I said, go to lucid.co. We have a good summer of resources there. Like I said, between the technology review, between the white paper, between the videos of anticipated features as well. We have a nice little news section where you can read our articles from whether Huffington Post or other press that we've got as well. So, there is good content there. And in terms of the payment itself and the purchase, we've just launched our investors dashboard. So when you go on lucid.co and click buy LCD, it will take you to the investor dashboard where you can create your account. It's very simple and straightforward and transparent in terms of the purchase. And I think all major cryptocurrencies are kind of available for to use to be used to buy the LCD token.
I was just going to ask, really, what are the biggest challenges you face at the moment?
Well, the biggest challenges is we know that we have every ICO will talk positively about their offering, but if we really feel like we stand out in terms of the technology and bringing legitimate hardware solution to an industry that's about to go crazy, right? I mean, by 2025, some conservative reports estimate that the number of smart glasses shipped will be bigger than smartphones, and eventually that shift between, display and and actual, smartphones will be completed. We won't need screens, right? So we feel we have a legitimate shot at being part in that, which is huge. But in the short term, it's really the biggest, concern for us was that we started pretty late, meaning that we started our marketing and awareness campaign late in the process, pretty much in early October, so just a month ago. And so the biggest concern or issue for us right now is, getting into the blockchain space and, getting our offer understood fully when it comes to its benefits and what kind of breakthrough tech we have on hand, right? Because I understand that, a lot of people in the crypto space, in the blockchain space, will not even be skeptical, but I feel like we're such a different offering in the ICO space that we might not necessarily. There might be additional time needed for people to get comfortable with us, which is, perfectly fine. It's just really a timing constraint, right? We've been raising our awareness campaign pretty aggressively over the last couple weeks. So, we're seeing a lot of interest as well. We have a couple funds actually. We have a call with Deborah Partners Group, which is a big fund in the UK tomorrow morning, and we have a couple other funds we're speaking to next week as well on the venture capital funds. And eventually, I think that's how it's probably gonna go for us. That's some of those fans will participate and complete the offering in the next couple of weeks. To be honest with you, because the tech behind it is so good, and so that's probably the biggest concern for us. We're also thinking about competitors, right? When you think about the risks, right? Like we're aware of like our advantages between the tech, between the team, between the governance and so forth. But there are efforts going out there, whether with HoloLens, whether with Google Glass and Magic Leap and so forth and so on. So it is entirely possible that one of them will come up with some sort of model in 2018, let's say, right? But number one, in this scenario like that, it's unlikely when you go through the technological specs of what we are addressing that they'll address every single aspect we're addressing or our tech is addressing. That's number one. And number two is that the space, the market is going to be so deep and there's going to be so many applications that, and there is going to be more than enough space for more than one player, in this space, right? So that's how we're approaching that. And, smartphones came up in 2006, 2007, and Apple grasped pretty much unchallenged number one spot. But there's a lot of major players that have been able to tap into the market. The other concern is that some people say that associated with that is Google kind of screwed the marketing for us because with their unsuccessful efforts, and we're kind of coming from behind, and but that's exactly what we're addressing. It's funny because how you guys can compete with those people, we're actually fixing what they couldn't come up with. So, or at least some aspects. We're not claiming we're solving all the issues of augmented reality displays, but we're solving quite a few really important, if not one of the most important aspects that are preventing them from going mainstream. So there's a lot of value there. So, guys, some people are saying, well, you don't have a prototype yet. We're like, yeah, well, we're a startup. We're crowd selling, to build this startup. And we have scientific analysis of our patents. We have the top, optics and AR experts who believe in our technology and, are very optimistic and excited to jump on the project. And, we have 13 patents, right? Google, we're not going to be Google, right? But Google in mid-90s or whatever started with one pending patent, right? We have 13 exclusive patents. And, we do have a really good, solid, tangible thing on in terms of addressing those problems with the hardware tech, right? But it's just, conveying that message, right? That, we're a startup, that we have legitimate technology on board. And that's, primarily a hardware solution we're offering in an ICO space, which is, which might be a point of contention for some, people associated with, blockchain and crypto space. But I think that we're kind of their counter argument that's pretty heavy here is that, how we're going to be able to leverage blockchain, what we call Lucid Lab ecosystem, right, for the apps and the content creation, and rewarding people and users and developers, and then eventually, facilitating peer-to-peer payments on the platform with LCD token. So, I would say the biggest problem is to essentially, selling people, convincing people on that vision, right? Because it's number one, people really have in the back of their head those unsuccessful efforts. And then number two, we're coming in with hardware and to the ICO space, which is a pretty new thing, I think. Maybe you guys know some ICOs out there that do offer hardware solutions, but at least the most recent ones and most significant ones did not really have any hardware solution, maybe other than Monaco, which I think had that card, right? So yeah, I think that's that.
Very interesting, and certainly something I'll be reading up more on.
Yeah. No, I mean we're committed to like informing people a lot, and whether with newsletters, and we have a pretty robust Facebook info and Twitter info as well. We have over 3,000 people in our Telegram group. We're keeping regular updates there, whether it's in terms of new scientific advisors, or pretty soon I think we might be able to release like a central optical design that's going to be based off in terms of the prototype. And then we're posting video updates. We also have like over 20 videos on YouTube as well that show either the glasses or the interviews with our team. We're a real team. We have proper segregation of duties. It's a real business, held on by Cliff, who's an experienced executive, like I said, and other people, myself. I mean, I've been in between corporate accounting and business, and for 8 years now. I'm a CPA, so I'm really committed to those governance structures and financial reporting transparency as well. So yeah, read more about us on the website. We'll be adding more articles on the news as well. But primary channels I would recommend are number one, Facebook, Twitter, Telegram, and YouTube.
Awesome. Well, I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, no, absolutely, guys. The founders and developers are there for you. Even if you guys, are interested in holding some other call with more folks on the team, we can arrange for that as well.
Okay. Well, I look forward to the future and finally getting a pair in my hand.
We do too. Onwards and forward. Yeah. Working around the clock.
All right. Well, take care.
Always.
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Cheers, Konrad. Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, guys. Have a good day.
Get your links here. The link for more information is lucid.co. Put that in your browser, and that's spelled LUCYD.co. Excellent. Click on it, and don't forget to like them on Facebook too, and other social media platforms. Find out more about this very exciting project, which should be something we will keep an eye on. Excellent work.
Thank you very much, Ian. Thank you, Konrad, for being our guest. Thanks, Heather and Steve, for giving us that recap. Please check out the links in the show notes to support us and our friend Chris Robinson of the Blockchain Store. We don't get any money from that. We're just trying to help him out because we think it's pretty cool. We do this show for free and fun. So if you are able, please hit the link to donate so I can get a new laptop on my table. Thank you, Sarah, for doing the artwork. Our intro and outro music by Andrew Pouch. Thank you, Andrew. I might come see you around Christmas.
To learn more, visit theblockchainshow.com.